There was a simple house hidden among the alleys of a city in Israel. It was not a cozy home, but it was all they had. 2 women lived there, united more by pain than by friendship. They were prostitutes, rejected women, looked down upon by many, forgotten on the margins of society. They had no family nearby, no husbands, no support, only each other. Within a few days of each other, they both gave birth. No midwives, no caring hands around them. The birth of their children was quiet, like almost everything else in their lives. But in that poor room, something sacred happened. Each one, holding her own baby for the first time, experienced something new. Something that even their hard and lonely lives had not been able to take away. A pure, deep, overwhelming feeling. A mother's love. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting Bible stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. The routine was exhausting. Makeshift diapers, sleepless nights, crying that took turns into the early hours of the morning. But even so, there was joy. For the first time, these women had something of their own. Someone to care for. Someone who depended solely on them. The sound of babies crying filled the house with a kind of life they had never known. Perhaps they laughed together, exchanged advice or confidences. Perhaps for a few days they experienced a kind of sisterhood. But under that roof, between love and exhaustion, there was also fragility. And when fragility meets pain, the unexpected can happen. One night, while everything seemed calm, fate began to unfold in a tragic way. Deep sleep, carelessness in the early hours of the morning, the interrupted breathing of a small body. In the darkness, death entered silently, without fanfare, and nothing would ever be the same again. It was there, in that simple house between 2 mothers and 2 babies, that the story began to turn into a drama that would reach the king's throne. Before continuing, I want to invite you to comment on which city or country you are watching from. Let's see how far this message is reaching. The dawn that followed was different, heavier, more silent. In the dim light of the room, one of the women realized that the child in her arms was no longer breathing. The small body, still warm, was motionless. Her heart raced. She tried to rock him, call him, breathe life into him, but the baby did not respond. Death, cold and cruel, had crept into the child's sleep. She stood motionless for a moment, as if time had stopped. Then she covered her face with her hands and moaned softly, as if trying to cry without being heard. It was a muffled lament, full of pain and confusion. Perhaps she didn't know what to do. Perhaps she was in shock. Perhaps she couldn't bear to face that loss alone. It was then that in an impulsive, desperate, silent act, she approached the other bed. In the dark, with hesitant gestures, she switched the babies. She took her living son and put her dead son in his place. She wanted to convince herself that this would make the pain go away. But there was something deeper going on, something even she couldn't understand. On the other side of the room, the other woman slept. Exhausted, unaware of the switch, she continued to dream of her little one's future. She didn't know that when she woke up, she would face a nightmare that no mother should ever have to live through. The day dawned slowly, and light began to stream through the window. When she woke up, the mother of the real living baby noticed something strange in her arms. The body seemed different, stiff. The face was familiar, but not the same. Her instincts took over. This wasn't normal. Her heart raced. She examined the little one more closely, and the truth hit her like a blow. This wasn't her son. The pain was immediate. She cried, screamed, and searched for answers in the other woman's eyes, but all she found was denial. Her companions swore that the living child was hers, that the dead one belonged to the other. The room became a battlefield of accusations and tears. Neither would give in. Each held to her version of events, while the innocent baby remained between them, not knowing who he really belonged to. At that moment, the conflict could no longer be resolved there. It was necessary to go further, to seek justice. And there was only one place where that could happen: before the king. If this content is touching your heart, you can support this project by donating any amount by clicking on the "Thank you very much" button. Your support helps me to continue telling these stories with dedication. The walk to the palace was long, not because of the distance from the city, but because of the weight of anguish that each step carried. The two women held the same baby, each claiming him as if he were part of their own soul. One child, two hearts at war, and no witnesses to resolve what seemed impossible. When they arrived before the king's guards, they begged for an audience. They were not nobles, nor did they have social importance. They were women of ill repute, discredited by society. But on that day, they carried something more valuable than reputation: the deep pain of a mother's heart, even if only one of them spoke the truth. The guards allowed them to enter. The news that two women were disputing a single living baby reached the ears of King Solomon. For many, it would be just another disturbing case, worthy of contempt. But for the young king, newly established on the throne, that challenge was an opportunity to exercise something he had sincerely asked God for: wisdom to judge fairly. The audience chamber was filled with advisors and servants. The curious people began to gather around. It was unusual for two women like these to be heard by the king, but there they were, before the throne, each firmly holding the sheet where the baby lay, as if he were the last hope of a lifetime. Silence filled the room. Solomon watched intently. His hands were clasped on his knees. His gaze was calm but deep. He did not just see faces, he sought what was behind the eyes. Intentions, truths, fears. One by one, the women spoke. Each told her version with tears in her eyes and a broken voice. The first said, "My son is the living one, the dead one is hers." The other replied, "No, the dead one is yours, the living one is mine." The cries overlapped, and the confusion grew. Neither backed down, neither gave in. Solomon remained silent for a few seconds, as if listening to more than just words, and then he rose from his throne. The moment had come. Everyone awaited his decision, an answer that would not only determine the fate of that baby, but reveal whether there was, in fact, wisdom on the throne of Israel. The tension in the hall was almost palpable. King Solomon stood, watching the two women before him. The baby slept in the arms of one of them, oblivious to the drama surrounding him. The silence was broken by the king's calm voice, asking each woman to present her version again. He wanted to hear not only the words, but what lay behind them. The tremor in their voices, the weight of their pauses, the despair that overflowed. The first woman spoke with tears in her eyes. She told how she had woken up that morning and found the baby dead beside her. She described her fear, her shock, and her almost instinctive realization that this was not her child. She said she examined the little face, the hands, the features, and then she knew the living baby was hers, the dead one was not. She cried out for justice, but without aggression. There was pain, yes, but also tenderness. The second woman responded immediately, but with a different firmness. Her voice was more defensive, more direct. She vehemently asserted that the living child was hers and that the other woman was lying. She accused, pointed fingers, denied everything. There was no hesitation in her words, only an almost defiant tone, like someone trying to sustain a forced truth. Solomon listened without interrupting. His eyes alternated between the two, but his mind was traveling deeper paths. It was not just a matter of logic, it was necessary to touch the heart of the truth, because there, before him, was a drama of life and death. Two women in conflict, but only one moved by real love. The room remained in suspense. The advisors looked at each other, unable to suggest any solution. There were no witnesses, there was no evidence, just two contradictory stories and a helpless baby. Solomon knew that what he did next would echo for a long time. He needed to go beyond what was seen, beyond what was heard. He needed to expose what was hidden, not to shame, but to reveal. It was then that, in a simple gesture, he issued an order that would take everyone by surprise. A praise that would tear through the room like thunder in the midst of calm, and that would put love to the test as never before. Solomon's command fell upon the room like a weight impossible to ignore. "Bring me a sword." Eyes widened. Murmurs spread among those watching. It was an unexpected, disconcerting instruction. What did the king intend to do with a sword in front of two mothers and a baby? None of those present dared to question him. The servant left quickly and returned with the blade in his hands. Solomon received it calmly, but his gaze remained fixed on the two women. Then he gave the most shocking order, that the living baby be cut in half, and half be given to each of them. There was a terrible silence. For a moment no one moved. It was as if time had stopped. Then the reaction came, quick, desperate, genuine. The woman who was in fact the mother stepped forward, her face contorted with pain, and she cried out in a broken voice, "Oh, my lord, give her the living child. Do not kill him." Her hands rose as if to protect her son, even though he was no longer in her arms. Her whole body cried out for mercy. She was willing to give up motherhood as long as the baby remained alive. The other woman, however, remained motionless. Perhaps she was surprised. Perhaps she was trying to maintain her composure. And then, in a dry tone, she said, "Neither mine nor yours. Let it be divided." Her words sounded cold and cutting, like the sword that had been brought. It was there, in that moment of extreme tension, that Solomon's heart received the confirmation he sought. He needed no witnesses, no evidence. Love spoke louder. The true mother had been revealed, not by logic, but by sacrifice. The child remained untouched. The sword was not used. The silence in the room gave way to a collective sigh of relief and awe. Solomon turned to his servants and pronounced the sentence that would end the trial with unquestionable justice. The conflict, which seemed unsolvable, had found its answer, not by force nor by arguments, but by an act of love that was willing to lose so that life could be preserved. The king raised his hand, and everyone fell silent. The cries of the woman begging for her son's life still echoed through the hall. Her plea left no doubt. She was the true mother. No one who did not love deeply would be able to give up their own child to save him from death. Solomon approached slowly. His gaze rested for a few seconds on the woman who had chosen to give up her baby alive. She was trembling. Her head was bowed, as if she felt the weight of immense pain, but also the relief of having been heard. Then he turned to the other woman, who remained rigid, her eyes cold and her face expressionless. Then in a firm and clear voice, Solomon declared, "Give the living child to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother." The sentence was like a light piercing through the fog of doubt. It was simple, direct, definitive. The real woman fell to her knees, relieved. Her tears now flowed not from despair, but from gratitude. Her son would be saved. She would have him back in her arms, not because she screamed louder, but because she loved more deeply. A mother's heart had won. The other woman, unmasked before everyone, said nothing more. Perhaps she understood in that moment what she had done. Perhaps she repented, perhaps not. The fact is that there, before the king's throne, the truth was clearly exposed. All who witnessed that moment were silent. The weight of the decision, the way justice was revealed, and the use of a simple sword as an instrument of discernment had a profound impact. It was not just intelligence. It was not a trick. It was wisdom, wisdom that came from God. The baby, innocent in all this drama, was handed over to his true mother. She welcomed him into her arms as if it were the first time. She held him close to her chest, smelled his hair, caressed his face. It was as if life was beginning anew for both of them, and in that hall, the throne of Israel gained more than respect. It gained admiration. Solomon had judged fairly, but also with compassion. And the story of those two women, so different and so human, would echo as a symbol of true discernment. The trial was over, but hearts were still beating fast. The hall, once filled with doubt, was now a place of reverence. And at the center of it all, one image would remain forever etched in memory: a king, a true mother, and a child saved by an act of love. The sword, which moments before had symbolized risk and fear, now rested silently in the hands of a servant. It did not wound, divide, or destroy, but it was through it that the truth emerged. The king did not use it as an instrument of violence, but as a key to unlock what was hidden. A test that pierced the surface of words and exposed the essence of the heart. The woman who tried to deceive saw her plan fall apart. She had not counted on the other's courage, on the power of selfless love. Perhaps she hoped that pain would confuse justice. Perhaps she thought that because they were both marginalized, they would not be taken seriously. But on that day, justice spoke louder than reputation, and wisdom proved greater than any social label. The real mother, still emotional, did not say much. She did not need to. Her gesture was enough. The way she held the baby, the way she looked at him, the way she cradled him back in her arms, was proof enough of who she was. The love that chose to lose everything to save a life was now honored before everyone. Solomon returned to his throne with a serene expression. He did not seek applause or recognition. He had only done what he thought was right. But what happened that day went beyond the limits of an ordinary judgment. It touched the hearts of those who were there and planted respect in the people. The sword, then, ceased to be a symbol of fear and came to represent wisdom. Because truth does not always come from words. Sometimes it reveals itself in the most extreme gestures, in the most difficult choices. And that morning, the greatest gesture of love was precisely that of letting go, when everything inside cried out to hold on. The truth was not declared with evidence, nor supported by arguments. It emerged powerfully through a love that preferred to lose rather than hurt. And it was precisely this desperate and sincere surrender that tore away the veil of doubt and revealed before everyone who the real mother was. The woman took her son back into her arms with the care of someone holding something sacred. There were no cries of victory, nor accusations against the other, only a silence full of emotion and reverence. She welcomed him with tears, as one who rediscovers not only her son, but her own dignity that had been threatened. Solomon watched closely. His decision was not just a judgment between two women. It was an exposure of the human soul. One showed selfishness disguised as possession, the other genuine love, willing to sacrifice. And in the face of this, the king only recognized what his own heart already knew. Authentic love does not need to impose itself. It reveals itself. The woman who tried to deceive the king stood silently. Perhaps she knew at that moment that she had crossed a dangerous line. Before all the people, her coldness was exposed. But Solomon did not humiliate her, did not condemn her publicly. His sentence was already set. She was not the mother, and that in itself was enough. The story spread throughout the city and soon beyond the walls of Jerusalem. The people talked not only about the baby and the women, but also about the king, about how in his youth he had demonstrated a wisdom that did not come from men. Solomon had done more than decide a case. He had shown how to judge with discernment, sensitivity, and truth. And that woman, the real mother, returned home a changed person, still wounded by the experience, but also strengthened. She knew she had been seen, heard, and that justice had been done. And in her arms, her son slept peacefully, unaware that his life had been saved not by force, but by a love that knew how to yield. The real mother, upon leaving the palace, walked with her son in her arms, as if carrying a miracle. Her soul still carried the echoes of the fear she had experienced, but now there was something new pulsing in her heart, the feeling of finally being heard and recognized. It no longer mattered what people said about her profession or her social status. Before the king, she had been seen as a mother, and as a mother, she was restored. Justice on that day did not only change the child's life, it restored dignity to that woman who had been unjustly accused, who had almost lost her son, who had endured the pain of being discredited. By being listened to with sensitivity, her truth was confirmed. Her surrender, her gesture of letting go, had not been in vain. It was this love that exposed the lie and protected life. Meanwhile, the other woman left in silence. There were no cries, no revolt, just a heavy countenance, perhaps laden with shame or regret. She had faced the truth and lost. She had tried to take what did not belong to her, and in the end, she was left empty-handed. The king's decision not only prevented her from taking a child that was not hers, but also confronted her with the reality of her intentions. The court, for its part, remained in reverence. Everyone knew they had witnessed something great. What seemed like just another difficult case with no apparent solution revealed divine wisdom in action. There was no doubt that God was with that young king, guiding his decisions with uncommon discernment. In the days that followed, the story spread by word of mouth as a testimony to the wisdom that now ruled Israel. The people came to respect Solomon even more, not only as a political leader, but as someone capable of judging the innermost of human issues. As for the restored mother, she returned to the simple home she had left, but everything in her had changed. The lap that had once been empty now welcomed life, and in her eyes there was gratitude. She knew that for love she had been willing to lose, and it was precisely that love that made her win. The story of these two women went beyond a simple judgment. It was not just a matter of deciding who a baby belonged to, but of revealing the secrets that dwell in the human heart. Amid pain, loss, dispute, and despair, the truth was revealed in an unexpected way, through the love that gives itself even at the risk of losing everything. The woman who chose to give up her son rather than see him die showed the deepest of human feelings: sacrificial love. In her decision, there was pain, but also courage. She chose to suffer in silence as long as her son lived. This devotion touched the king's heart and revealed a wisdom that could not be learned from books, but came from above, directly from the throne of God. Solomon, in using the sword as a test, did not act coldly or cruelly. He went straight to the point that no lie could resist: a mother's love. And in bringing this to light, he taught everyone who was there and everyone who would hear this story that true wisdom knows the heart. This story confronts us even today. It reminds us that the truth is often not in what is said, but in what is lived. That the one who shouts the loudest is not always the one who is right. And that genuine love, the kind that prefers to sacrifice itself, will always find a way to reveal itself. It also teaches us to trust God as a source of discernment, because there are situations where there is no evidence, no witnesses, and everything seems confusing. But when we seek wisdom with humility, God shows us what is hidden and guides us to fair decisions. In a world where so many fight for control, for victory at any cost, this woman teaches us that surrender, when motivated by love, is the greatest victory of all. And that God's justice, though it may seem slow, never fails. The story of the two women before King Solomon invites us to reflect deeply on the value of wisdom, divine justice, and sacrificial love. In times of conflict, when the truth seems unclear and emotions override reason, we need to remember that the first attitude of a wise heart is to seek God's direction before reacting. He is the source of all wisdom and knows exactly what is hidden from human eyes. Justice does not always manifest itself in conventional ways or immediately. Sometimes it comes quietly, unexpectedly, through gestures that defy logic and reveal the deep intentions of the heart. This is what happened with the true mother who chose to give up her son to save him. an act that made no sense to human eyes, but was the key to exposing the truth before the king. This sacrificial love, even if misunderstood or silent, is the same love that God values. He does not see as the world sees. He does not define us by our failures or reputations, but by the truth that dwells within us. The woman despised by society was seen and honored by the king, precisely because of her heart willing to give up what she loved most to protect her son's life. And when all seems lost, when words are not enough, when justice seems distant and pain speaks louder, remember that God remains just. He acts in silence, but he never fails. Divine justice may come in ways we do not expect, and what is true will sooner or later be revealed. So stand firm, trust. Because the love, truth, and wisdom that come from above will never be ignored. If you enjoyed the story of the prostitutes with the baby and Solomon's judgment and want to continue following other stories of faith and overcoming, be sure to like this video and share it with those you love. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content. Together, let's explore more powerful lessons from the Bible.